Hey, what's going on everybody? Before the video gets started today, in addition to the Sonic the Hedgehog and the Mega Man comic book videos being uploaded today, I've also uploaded my Knuckles the Echidna story arc review, and you can look at it by clicking on the annotation right here. And this is just a way for me to get feedback from you guys to see if you like the multiple video reviews that I'm bringing out for 3 separate comic book series. If you guys like that, let me know in the comments below. If you think I should just stick to 2 comic book videos per month, please let me know below. And yeah, that's about it. So sit back and enjoy the show, and I'll see you all next time. So, I'll admit that at this point, 15 issues in, I'm getting a little bit tired of looking at these Sonic the Hedgehog comic books. And it's not to say that I'm regretting to having to review them necessarily, but it's just at the point where I just want to move on to the more serious stuff. And, you know, it's just come at that point where you just think to yourself, 15 issues in, and we are not really getting all that much substance. And to be fair, this is a series that, let's face it, is only really tying itself into a TV show and a video game just for the sake of marketing. So, honestly, there's not really much to talk about with this, except just summarize what happens until the next set of story arcs.
But let's mosey on down to Hedgehog Slice Town and take a good look at our next batch of stories, shall we? First item on the agenda, as presented by our lovely writers with He Who Shall Not Be Mentioned, Sonic Under Glass. The fuck does that even mean? In any case, Sonic has apparently won the war against Robotnik. Sure, whatever. The freedom fighters just decide they don't know what to do with their lives now that Robotnik is gone. Yeah, okay, already this is painful enough for me to read. I get that the issues preceding this one have not done anything to address drama or conflicting events that help develop these characters into stronger people. Animals. But keep in mind that this comic is supposed to be a hybrid of both Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog and Sat AM. They're putting a lot more emphasis on the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog bit, that's just fine, and I get that. Tee hee ha ha, kids are given these comics to kill some time, and I guess I can't blame it for doing that if it's at least entertaining. But imagine if you were like me, for example, because I started as a bit of a late bloomer into the Sonic series. In fact, I didn't get into the games until I played Sonic Riders and Unleashed. Not the best choices, but whatever, those are the only games I had. And the first issue I either got or borrowed from my friend in middle school, I can't remember which, was issue 198. Yeah, pretty far, I know, but look at all this cool action, intense scenes from the issues preceding it. This looked fucking cool for me. It made me wonder so much about how this series got started. Was it like Batman? Did they take the Sat AM intro and made the series this lighthearted but conflicting story about a group of freedom fighters who struggle to build a resistance against a mighty and strong dictator? In your dreams, Martin me matey. That's not how the dice rolls in these early issues. 6 months after the war, Sonic and Sally decide to get married and not, I don't know, restore the kingdom, find the king, recover the Sword of Acorns, reclaim Robotropolis, de-roboticize the Robian citizens, make contact with Knuckles and form a treaty, restore peace to the world. For 6 months they did, but fucking nothing to do anything to restore the world except plan for a wedding. I don't even get it either. Was their relationship really at a point where we could actually see these two be bonded through the ties of marriage? Well, I guess none of that really matters now, as this comic decides to cross between the realms of The Truman Show and Ghost in the Shell in this bitch. As it turns out, Dean Bristow over here actually has the freedom fighters under a comatose state in those weird jelly-looking tubes they used in Star Wars. As he keeps them in a reality where he is gone, they are living stupidly happy lives, and honestly, I kind of like this approach. This is actually one of the more smarter plans that we got out of this guy. Keep the freedom fighters distracted, send out the war machines, and enslave the friggin' world.
Finally, somebody gets it.
But no sooner does he leave, does Antoine suddenly get the ability to warp the fabric of this virtual reality, essentially making him Keanu Reeves. Sonic finally figures out what is going on in this 13th floor bullshit, and decides that in order to truly save his friends, he must break them out of the false reality, utterly destroying the greater good.
The greater good.
So, with Sonic suddenly gaining the ability to hack Robotnik's in a computer, he manages to steer the war machines towards Robotropolis and escape from said fortress, vowing to retrieve his captive Uncle Chuck, who showed up briefly as a plot convenience. On to our second story, The Man from Hedgehog. Robotnik smells a rat in their little organization, due to the fact that all of his plans have failed thanks to the freedom fighters' ability to aptly foil them at every turn. So after finding the literal mole of the freedom fighters and deducing the fact that the mole is about as effective in relaying information as the Napoleon strategies in World War I, Robotnik decides to buy a Wheel of Misfortune, aptly stating, if he doesn't know what he's going to do, Sonic will never know either. It goes about as planned, and after having several schemes fail, Robotnik decides to meet up with the blue marsupial himself in his new casino, but just like his misfortune entailed in the earlier scenes, his results turn up diddly prick until Sonic just inadvertently turns his abilities against him, causing him to be tied up in a 60s Batman trap. How will he ever get out of this one? By the power of neglectful artistry, of course, and with that, the story ends. It's time to look at Guerilla Warfare. And if you thought it was in reference to guerrilla tactics, you are sadly mistaken. So our story begins with Sonic bitching about how peace and prosperity sucks until we see the Lorax's obese half-brother getting involved in some game. Oh, but shh,
be very, very quiet. He's hunting gorillas.
More specifically, Robotnik is looking for the remnants of a robot he created back when his mustache was about as formal and subtle as Hitler's mustache. And in case the cover of the issues didn't clue you in, the footprint didn't give you a clue, and the fact that any mythical or horror-inspired creature being left on a deserted island didn't give you a clue, I highly suggest you start getting a clue right now.
Oh, I just started getting a clue.
Really?
Yeah, I'm totally getting a clue.
One page turnover later, and we are introduced to the most golden of gold robots, King Gong, really funny, who is covered with so much gold that even Scrooge McDuck would say is too much for him.
No, the diamonds are here!
So Robotnik decides to feed his overgrown Goku monkey a stash of Donkey Kong's banana hoard in order to gear him up to devour Sonic the Hedgehog. You know what I just realized? Take away the golden armor and realize for a second that this story involves a genius scientist warlord who creates this beast of an ape designed to eat our main hero, who has the ability to transform into a more powerful being and destroy other creatures like him, and also fights for the sake of freedom and for the vengeance of his family.
Sound familiar?
That's right, this whole story is practically a cartoony version of Attack on Titan without all the cool action, diverse characters, and epic music. Instead, the freedom fighters still do shit fucking jack to repair their world, and are more concerned with having another goddamn picnic. But it's okay, for our great hero soon discovers the 50-meter tall metal Edamon, who suddenly becomes smitten with Princess Sally because, of course he does, and so Jaleel White, Rob Paulson, and Brayley Pierce board the tornado to track down golden-painted Gorilla Grodd. After catching up, King Gon, for some reason, mistakes Sonic for a talking banana, and decides to swat at him a couple of times, leaving him distracted enough for Tails to fly in and effortlessly save the princess. Like, no joke, there is no reason for this guy to suddenly have his palm open to allow Tails to swoop in and rescue Sally. And the nonsense doesn't stop there either, as Sonic pulls a Super Soaker right out of fucking nowhere, guzzles him with a golden shower, causing him to fall to the ground, with Robotnik making that same stupid Godfather joke that Joey Wheeler pulled in the Pyramid of Light, and everything ends hunky-dory whatever. But our issue doesn't stop here, lads and ladies, for we have a special story for you today, and for once, I am actually really happy with this one. Now, it may not focus on Sonic the Hedgehog, but what it does have is an engaging story. It's Princess Sally in First Star I See Tonight. Well, if that's the case, I wouldn't pick the ones that are already encasing the entire night sky. Except for that one right in the corner there. That shooting star will do for you in comics what millions of kids have attempted and failed to do in real life. Sally is lamenting over the innocence of her love for Sonic and her childlike days when war wasn't complicated, being a princess meant the importance of diplomacy and responsibility, and when life was just life. But as we know, the big man himself rolled into town and destroyed the peace and prosperity of this world's version of Fern Gully, leading to the banishment of Sally's father. Not long after the Bruce Wayne tragic parent backstory, a meteor crashes near the Freedom Fighter base, leading them to discover a silver-coated Dragon Ball. While this story is minuscule compared to the others, I give it credit that it at least tries to introduce something that has any significant relevance to the upcoming stories. Yes, it's filler. Yeah, the art style doesn't fit the tone of the melodramatic storytelling, but it at least tried, goddammit. It gave me some form of sympathy for Sally in this story better than all the others. Remember those one-off jokes in the previous stories where I mentioned she was watching a soap opera or something silly like that? I could not give a shit about any of that. Here, this at least connects to me in a meta sense because I understand the feeling of losing someone, or not being with them in a long time. And it hurts, it really does hurt emotionally. Had this been a little fleshed out, like it eventually does in the comic, I would have called this a worthwhile read. As it stands, it's 3 pages long, doesn't really establish anything we didn't already know. It's just sort of there. But now we must venture forward into the next issue, so let's take a lookie. Okay, I swear I didn't get these two stories mixed up or anything, but we are literally doing another wedding scenario involving Sonic and Sally. I don't get why this is such a friggin' popular thing for the writers to do in the Archie comics, especially with the amount of alternative future stories that I'm a little uneasy about given the amount of ships this friggin' series has, but more on that later. First item on the list is Wedding Bluebells. The Freedom Fighters are setting up Sonic and Sally's wedding in a barn. A barn of all places. I think the only couples who think a barn would be appropriate for them would be Stardew Valley farmers or the remaining Gaulish villagers from Asterix and Obelix. A nearby motorbug drops in on the conversation that Sally and Bunny are having and makes its way back to Robotropolis to yada yada yada, go spy on them, see if it's official, prepare the bots for battle, hijinks ensue, let's see how the reception is. So it turns out this entire fucking fiasco was a stage play, and even though it's been showcased several times, these two make googly eyes at each other more times than Peter Parker and Mary Jane did in the Sam Raimi movies, Sonic decides, lol, no, and just bails out on Sally's proposal to marry her. Blow me. But not before we get our continuation of the previous Princess Sally story that involved that enlarged Davy Bowie ball he flicked about in Jim Henson's Labyrinth. But that thing isn't even the focus of today. Nope, even the writers have decided a giant crystal ball isn't mysterious or interesting enough, so we cut to this out of nowhere relative of Sally's called Julayla. She recounts the times where Destiny decided to go belly up on her easygoing princess life, and mold her into an intellectual leader in case shit like the evil of man showing up. The Yoda-like cat creature then suddenly dies, making me wonder why this character couldn't just be the caregiver that had more relevance in the previous issues than this walking throwaway. And Sonic manages to comfort her as she grieves over the loss of her teacher. I guess this is supposed to be an establishment of a character that suggests that she's an intellectual leader, but you know what would have been cool? If we got to see her being an intellectual leader instead of having an unnecessary exposition deathbed character just be like, yo, you've grown since you were young. Take the pebble from my hand. You're a true leader now. Blah, I'm dead. Like, come on, even Mecha Madness managed to demonstrate that characteristic of hers despite being an unintentional beat the shit out of each other story. Oh, good, we're back to that bullshit cosmic interstate thing that just floats around in the sky for some reason. To be fair, this is the first time, as far as I can recount anyway, that the comic does recount events that happened in earlier issues, so it's a nice way to get you up to speed with what happened in that story. Personally, I only like going back and reading these stories if they were good and worthwhile, but one thing at a time. So this Arnold Sonic nigger, get it, comes in and tells everybody that there are infinite universes comprising of multiple copies of Sonic. Basically, like the Earth 1 Barry Allen from The Flash, or the original Flash from Earth 3. You know what? Even the backstory to what Terminator Sonic says is completely the same story as Season 2 of The Flash. Without giving away too much, a threat in his world has caused his freedom fighters to supposedly die, and if they don't team up, all subsequent universes will be destroyed. So after gathering the 1001 DeviantArt Sonic OCs, Robo Robotnik, who should have totally been called Mecha Robotnik just because it sounds cooler, invades Mobius Prime with his blacker-than-black SWAT bots, which gains the attention of mustached Honey Boo Boo. One page of little to no action later, and all the Sonics decide to team up with the original Ivo Robotnik, essentially making this the 5th time that Sonic and Robotnik ever had to team up. And they decide in order to defeat Mecha Robotnik is to obtain the not Infinity Gauntlet and use it against him. However, the symbiote-covered Bruce Valanche decides to bring in evil Sonic, or reverse Sonic, I don't even care at this point, man. It's cool to see the references to Marvel, DC, and all famous superheroes, I guess, but it would have been cooler if we saw all of these different Sonics in an art style fighting off against these SWAT bots. Imagine using one of the art styles in Endgame and just seeing all the Sonics using different powers to whoop the ever-living hell out of these things. Think of the visual noise!
Just imagine it. All the world's most fantastic action-packed anime and film just spurging out all over you. Think of the visual noise!
They manage to find the gauntlet of getting shit done, get ambushed by John the Travolta, who manages to distract them long enough to teleport the darn thing back to Mecha Robotnik, who then uses it to create a Sentinel, except more goofier looking. The army of Jaleel Whites manage to get their shit together just in time to inflict Bluebells on Robotnik, take the broken pieces back to their respective universes, ending the only story in the issue. Okay, I'll admit, for an issue that had only the one story, I can't say that this one was bad. It was actually kinda creative seeing the different cameo Sonics dress up as one of my favourite characters. Some are questionable than others, but I definitely had fun reading this one. For our final issue today, with the cover clearly demonstrating the current ending of Sonic and Archie's partnership in a meta sense, Sonic and Sally break into Robotnik's factory to destroy an anti-matter machine. It's also where we are introduced to Nicole, Sally's handheld computer device who starts off as a navigator of sorts, but as the series progresses, we actually do see an interesting kind of character develop, but more on that as we go. Sonic rushes into the situation, but not before Robotnik can activate his trap card, Door of Sealing Dumbasses, causing Sonic to throw the bomb at the machine and getting himself caught in the explosion. Sally returns back to Knothole bearing the bad news that Sonic went to the great big chili dog in the Sky Sanctuary Zone, but a supposedly mostly dead Sonic still roams the Earth, and he returns to see that his friends are putting on a shoddy performance of mourning the hero. Even Tails refuses to believe that his brother has died.
Like they couldn't see or hear me. It's almost as if I were dead. No, I can't be dead. I can't be dead!
Sonic manages to figure out that the antimatter machine, the thing he was sent to destroy, caused him to have no solid, become invisible, and have no way of people to hear him. The effects are starting to dwindle as he just so happened to be away from the freedom fighters. What a time to have the two inconvenient powers just vanish away after 10 minutes, just so that the freedom fighters can sacrifice each other for the greater good. Robotnik once again fails to recognize that there is more than one capable freedom fighter willing to take him on, so all he gets is Robo Michael Keaton, here's Mecha Vulture. It's so easy for me to mix those two up. Sonic decides to fuck him over some more just in time for him to gain his form back, explain what happened to Sally, and we move on to our final story. Princess Sally in the deadliest of the species. Sally decides to tactical espionage action in this bitch, which is a nice change for once, as she sets some explosives up in Robotnik's weapon factory before making a run for it. She unfortunately comes across this character, not a personal favourite mind you, but I'll explain why as the series progresses. His name is Jeffrey St. John, a skunk with an overbearing accent and the leader of these so-called underground freedom fighters, and then, after that, we just end the story right there. There's nothing else to say except that now I have to start looking at the Princess Sally comics, just to help you guys get up to speed with what happens in the next part.
As for me, however, I'm kind of glad that we're going to move on to some more traditional storytelling. It's at this point that after issue 20, although you could say that issue 20 is about the very thing that I'm about to talk about, where the series is overtaken from the comedy into more serious storytelling, a little bit more traditional storytelling, and honestly, I could not think of any more comedic scenarios that the Archie writers could do with the previous stories that they were doing beforehand, so I'm looking forward to the next batch of stories. Now before I sign off, like I said at the beginning of the video, I've got my Mega Man and my Knuckles the Echidna videos all set, ready to go, ready to watch, so just click on any of these annotations right here, and yeah, until next time, take care of yourselves, have a good evening, and as always, stay awesome lovely viewers. I'll see you all next time.
Can you